Studies Professional Graduate Workshop Series. Today we have Nathaniel Stern, who is professor at Art and Design. And a little bit about him is that he's an artist, writer, Fulbright grantee, professor, interventionist, and public citizen. He's produced and collaborated on projects ranging from ecological, participatory, and online interventions, interactive, immersive, and mixed reality environments, to prints, sculptures, videos, performances, and hybrid forms. And one thing that I'm really interested in is his work on Bad at Sports.
Oh, thanks.
So he writes on sports, but his site is called Bad at Sports. So that's just a little bit about our presenter. And I just want to thank C21 for providing this time and these resources, but also my co-coordinator, Audrey Jacobs, who is in art history, and our videographer, Matthew Bellman. Thank you so much, and I think we'll just go ahead and get started.
Sure, no problem.
Great.
Hi everyone, how's it going? Good. Happy Wednesday. I mean, it is raining, but at least it's not snowing. That's what I'm kind of feeling about.
Yeah.
Thanks to EJ for the invite. I always like sharing things outside my normal teaching load. I mentioned to EJ that while I'm good at this kind of thing, you know, she asked me to give a kind of workshop on web identities and thinking about strategically how you might present yourself online. It's not my specialty, but I am hoping that I can provide everyone with some strategies to think with, and I have had a lot of success with it, even though it's not what I normally teach. First and foremost, I think it's really worthwhile when thinking about how you want to structure your online identity. It's very often one hears the phrase, I need a website, or more commonly nowadays, I need a Twitter account, or a Facebook like page, or an academia profile, or whatever. And the truth is you don't. You do not need it. And while some people think, oh, well, it couldn't hurt, actually it could hurt. If it's not good, if it's not updated frequently, if there's better content out there, for example, if your profile page on UWM's website is really good, or you have a blog or some other profile page elsewhere that's really good, and instead it finds your crappily not updated very often Twitter page because it's a higher page rank on Google, it's actually going to hurt how you present yourself online. If that good page is getting beaten out by a page that has very few likes, or a Twitter account that has very few followers. Generally speaking, then, the first question you want to ask when you're trying to construct an online identity, or building a website, or joining one, if this is a careerist move as opposed to a dialogue-based or community move, and bear in mind that these two things always go hand in hand. The dialogues that we create and are a part of are always already a part of our research and a part of our career, and we shouldn't really separate these things too much. Why? What do you want to accomplish? What is it you want to be accomplished? And more importantly, do you have realistic expectations of what Academia EDU or your own website or etc. is going to accomplish for you? For me, there was only one real reason when I first went online. I'm on like version 4 of my website now. I studied at the Interactive Telecommunications program. I specialize in new media art. And to be honest, my first website sucked. And it was precisely because I was following that trajectory of, oh, I need a website. And I didn't think through why I was using specific technologies or what I was trying to achieve. I think versions 3 and 4 were more on the mark, and I'm going to use them as a kind of case study today to just think through the kinds of strategies I use and hope that maybe then we can workshop brainstorming with all of you what you might want to do and where and why. I didn't think for my own website that the real reason was documentation of my work. I didn't think it was going to blow up my career or even help my career very much, to be very honest. On the occasion that there was a person, though, who saw my work and wanted to show it to someone else, whether that's a student or an academic or an art appreciator or whatever, I wanted them to be able to easily find images and video, easily find text, and then promote them elsewhere. And I knew immediately that if I did this, it would have to be updated frequently. There's nothing more annoying or coincidentally more common than the quip of, oh, I need to update my website. Oh, I haven't updated. Oh, I haven't tweeted in so long. For me, new work has to be online before any given exhibition opens. I try to put abstracts of my papers and outlines of them before any given conference. And then documentation is live preferably before or within a week after the show if it's a site-specific installation and the first time I'm going to take images of there. If the paper can be distributed, depending on whether it's being published or not and what the rules are with that. For people I'm publishing, I also will put it online for download right away. I'm going to show these two versions here, and I'll explain a bit about the plot. Unfortunately, my old website, interestingly enough, I deleted it from my server like a week before EJ contacted me. And so I can't, because it's PHP-based and dynamic, I can't show you how it actually functioned, but I found like an old presentation screenshot, so I can at least show you a little bit of it and why I made the decisions I did. The second question after you ask why is, it has to do with your strategy, which should be based always on two specific things. Who is your audience and what impact do you hope to have on them? You can have more than one audience and more than one impact, but I'd limit it in diversity somewhat. Try to keep it down to 3 audiences or less. Try to have, and then have one specific impact for each of them. And be as specific as you can so that you can design for them. So for example, this is an older version of my website. And my 3 audiences for this site are curators, and specifically museums and new media curators, so not commercial galleries on any level. I'm looking at academic type institutions. And even for this, I was aiming for local communities and trans-local communities. So by that I mean I was living between Johannesburg and Dublin at the time, so I really wanted to cover art in Johannesburg and Dublin and be geared towards the kinds of dialogues happening there. And then the trans-local community was the new media community that was small enough internationally that we were all communicating with each other at the same time. The second audience then would be academics, and so this would be potential colleagues, because I was looking for a job at the time. I was not yet here. But also academics who might write about my work. And so I wanted to make it, again, like that was at the core, make it very easy for them to include my work in their papers, right? I had Creative Commons licensed images, downloadable videos in 7 different formats, not just YouTube because it's hard to download from YouTube, those kinds of things. And my third audience then was other artists, fellow artists. I wanted to be seen as part of a community because I am part of a community. I wanted to be in dialogue. More than 60% of my own work is collaborative. I'm consistently working with other artists. A lot of it is very participatory. I need other people, even when it's my own work. I do sometimes work with Wikipedia or Twitter that requires participants in order for the work to function. And so I wanted to be engaged with that community. So in line with this, you also need to consider, as part of the design, when you're thinking about audience's impact, how are they going to find your website? Everyone thinks, oh, I put it up and they will get there, and that's the end of it. And it doesn't work that way. Are you giving them cards? Are you meeting them at conferences? Do you expect to be found on Google? And Google's not, this is the big question for me. I engineered this site, and we can talk about it briefly and then more if you have questions, very much towards, like, there's a guy who wrote a PhD on how Google's algorithms work and the open side of it. And it's still very relevant, but he wrote it right when I was designing the site. And so I read the whole thing, and my brain hurt a little bit, but it was very much engineered towards being found on Google. But more common now, first of all, Google's not even how people find things now. They find it on Facebook. They find it on Twitter. They find it through social media. But then other ways that you might be found are through tagging systems and searches, like on academia. That's how a lot of people find papers there. Are you giving papers with links to your site on them? How many folks will actually go to your site from this? Is it worth the work for you to make a site or update an account frequently? For me, it is. And this is a long-term strategy rather than a short-term one. The proliferation of my work, even if just 1 or 2 people see it and send that link off, it over time has really worked out extremely beneficial for me. I always make sure the site is displaying what it should be before I have that big exhibition or paper, and even if it's just 2 or 3 or 4 people, I'm starting to be written about by academics other than myself and my wife, which is very nice. So the impact then of the version of this site, actually I don't think I need a slide for this, was that I want all 3 of these communities, right? The curators, the academics, and the fellow artists. And I got to see me as an active member of those communities, to see me as a thoughtful artist, who's writing, making work, collaborating, teaching, and making a difference. And they might find me through an exhibition or face-to-face meeting, but part of my strategy was to also play with these communities and make them want to find me. Now, there's no always an easy way to do this, but I did it and accomplished it a few different ways, and I'll talk about that in a while. The second is I want curators to curate me. I want them to put me on shows or recommend me to other curators. They should find me. These are the people who are going to find me not by in-person, but hopefully via Google or peers or exhibitions. And what I actually want them to do, because you can think about what can they do on this actual site, is contact me, right? Because we haven't actually hit base yet. So, thinking about where you put your email address or your CV and how it functions within the site is very important in terms of how many clicks away and how you, what impact, what is it that you want them to do when they reach you, when they see this. I want academics to see me as a potential colleague, to hire me. They're going to find my site through job applications. They don't need to contact me right away because they're already going to have all my details and information. And then I want artists to simply be aware of my work, perhaps to teach it, to talk about it, to be in touch if they feel sympathetic. So all of that, I feel like, oh yeah, there that is. There's the impact. I already said this, sorry. I made this morning, before 3 meetings I had before I got here. So for me, the thing that hits all of these in terms of impact the most would be community, right? And how do I draw that community to my site? How do I make them see me as part of a community? So at the time, Google was still how most folks found what they were looking for. Surfing was mostly through hyperlinks and through emails, not through, blogs weren't even really that popular yet. I was one of the first blogs on art, contemporary art in South Africa. And so this is how I was playing with how people would find me. Now, in terms of Google, there's a few things that work to direct people to your site with certain names. Does everybody know the basic gist of how Google works? That it's based on a PageRank system, and the number of people who link to you give you a higher PageRank, and then who you link to give them a higher PageRank. And so it's a recursive algorithm. That's why Google, other than blogs and Twitter and Facebook, is only updated once a month, because it takes that long to see who's linking to who, give everyone at the top the highest page rank, trickle down, and then back up again, right? Trickle down doesn't work, so something else, some other analogy. But then as part of that as well, so what it comes down to, there's little tricks in here, like having the name of your website be the actual words that you want the Google search to find is really good. Using headings, like actual headers for it. But when it comes down to it, content is king. Like it really is what's on your website and how good it is. And that works both in terms of Google and in terms of people linking to you, which then feeds back into Google. The tricks can work for a while. Reblogging content, tweeting other people's stuff, but really original content is your way. You want other people writing about you, and I knew this. And so in addition to having my own site about my work, I started a blog. And I don't have my blog. It's not up and running anymore. But I would post a minimum of 2 original content posts every week. I would review between 1 and 5. No, I would usually average about 5 exhibitions a week. And it wouldn't be just copying and pasting a press release, and it wouldn't be just copying and pasting an artist statement. I would go to the show, and I would write original content. And I would do book reviews on my site. And I would do, and that's what got me in part of the new media scene, and it worked. Usually when I would go to a local show in Joburg, they would see me as part of a community. I wasn't just navel-gazing on my own stuff. And they would want to know me, and they would want to talk to me. And they would be interested in my opinion, both because I spent time thinking about this stuff and because they wanted me to write about them. And then they became interested in my own work as well, and I became a known entity. Even to this day now, where I don't upkeep my blog, funnily enough, and this is where my teaching stuff flowed into it, my post on how to write an artist statement is my most popular page on my website. I get, on average, 2,000 visits, unique visits to this a week. They use it to teach at the new school. They use it to teach in at least 7 universities that I know of. And that happen through the network that I'm using. Politics and personal stuff too, I actually would post. I know a lot of people say that that it's good to separate your personal life from your professional life. It depends on how much you want to separate those lives. When people say, oh my God, Facebook is sharing your private information, I'm like, you're idiotic enough to put personal information on Facebook. Of course they're sharing it. Of course they are. So for me, I do post personal stuff about my family or my daughter, but I don't post stuff that I wouldn't tell my students or that I wouldn't tell you or that I wouldn't want a potential employer to know. And part of that is because, yes, I want to be professional, but I also want to be approachable. This is both who I am and how I function in the world. My work is dialogical. I love to talk to people. You can probably see already. I love to share information, and I love people to share that information to you. Most of my theory is the theoretical framework of my written projects and of my making projects is on affect and on ecologies, and so thinking, feeling, and the idea of objectivity. Thinking, feeling is always a part, and the idea of objectivity I find laughable. And so I want that to be incorporated. And that also too worked. Like my child was the most well-known under 10-year-old at every opening. They would see her, even here the other night, like, oh, I knew you were here. I saw your daughter running around. This happened like last week at the Pitch Project opening at Mike Brenner's new space. So people were, this really worked in terms of being a part of those communities. But then in terms of the site itself, I think it's really important to think through how this is organized. For me, the dialogue bit was important, but also I'm an academic, and I knew I was an academic. This was before the crash, and so a lot of my friends had decided to go the commercial gallery route. I have gallery representation in Johannesburg as well as here in Milwaukee, but even then, and I don't make, like, I'm lucky if I break even. But even then, I knew that wasn't the route for me. I wanted to be an academic. So how did that translate here? Well, first of all, here's the three things that are the most important in order to reach them, right? I'm a part of a community. You can contact me really easily, and here's all the things I'm doing, and here's my art. And and they're even in the hierarchy of what's going to be most important. The dialogical art, the information you need to contact me because that's who I'm after, and then here's how you can see I'm a part of the community. I want to be seen as engaged, so there's 4 different works that you can do. This is updated once a month. Obviously this is from 2011 because it's an older version of my site. Here's some recent stuff. Bad Sports is actually not. It's an art podcast. It's based in Chicago. So the joke is that artists are all bad at sports, and they interviewed me actually. I'm not that bad at sports.
Oh, okay. I didn't want to assume.
No. And so and then easily being able to search for what they need, have subscribe to my newsletter if you want to hear about exhibitions. Don't overdo that. 3 times a year maybe. And I'll put if I have a big solo exhibition or a book release, and then I'll put 5 other things in one email rather than sending out lots and lots of emails. I wanted them to see me as doing a diverse amount of work and as thoughtful and as an academic. So there's lots of text to easily copy and paste into whatever you want. You can send links. There's lots of different, I broke it down. Here's media, here's series, here's concepts. I actually remade this morning. This is about what the site looked like. I'm sure there was a few other things here. So I wanted them to understand that I worked across many disciplines. I wanted them to feel like, and this is a hard one, because a lot of places, and this is something you have to think about too, a lot of places say they want interdisciplinary thinkers, interdisciplinary artists, interdisciplinary humanities people. They're mostly lying. They do not, okay? Because if you give them 5 papers, and they're all completely different, and they like 4 of them, and the 5th one they don't like, instead of saying, oh, these are all really diverse papers, I like how they're experimenting, they say, oh, this other person who basically wrote 5 of the same exact paper, I liked all 5 of them, and I didn't like that one. And if I like all 5, and only 4 of these, so you have to really be careful. Interdisciplinarity is often a way to say we want you to, for humanities people, especially digital humanities and arts people like me, I have my PhDs from an engineering department, what they mean is we want you to bring funding in. Right? We want you to be able to get money for us. We want to work you 3 times as hard. We want 3 masters. So you have to be careful I mean, I'm not trying to be cynical here. I love my job, but I teach in 3 departments. And I'm doing workshops like this all the time, and my department doesn't care that I'm here giving you my time, right? And so do it not to just get a job, because then it might be problematic. Do it if it's your passion. Do it and be strategic about it. And I changed this on my next website once I got here, in fact. I whittled it down a little bit. And when I apply to things like fellowships or grants, I do not show them all my work. I choose, I just show the works on paper when it's making residency. I just show the interactive work when it's when I apply to the Research Growth Initiative, for example. When I'm applying to the Arts Writers Grant now, I kind of mention briefly that I'm an artist, even though that's my main practice. And it's all about the writing and the publishing. And you want to be really careful about that, because they don't mean it. They think they do, but they don't. But anyway, at this point in my career, it was really worthwhile to throw as much spaghetti as I could at the wall and see which pieces stuck, because there was all different kinds of jobs for new media practitioners and scholars. Again, it was before the crash, so I had like I was a finalist for 6 jobs that year that I came to UWF. All of these images and videos were Creative Commons licensed, so anyone could use them, could remix them, could publish them anywhere. I used YouTube and Flickr to host all the images, but then they were based here, so you could see them here, but I didn't host them here so that I didn't have multiples of them. And if you click, they went to high-res versions. All the YouTube videos underneath them would have downloadable MP4, downloadable OVG, because I said I was DIY, and it had to be the open source codecs, downloadable MOVs, like part of that community. If you notice, the images are last, and they're small. And it's because at this point I wanted to be an academic artist, right? I was going for my PhD. I wanted to sit somewhere between scholarship and the arts. And so while it's important that it's there and they're pretty, it was more important to have lots of text that dominates for me. At this point, now a lot of people do this. A lot of people do database-driven websites, but back then they didn't. So most websites you would have like sculpture, installation, media. I liked to have them cross-referenced, but there was no way to do it, so I had like multiple copies of the pages. By the time I moved to this is a WordPress hack that I built myself. Don't have to do that anymore. You can get really great WordPress hacks. But these are filters rather than actual categories. So everything sits everywhere, and then it just filters out stuff that don't fit in that category, so they can all be cross-referenced. And what's nice about if you're going to build a website, and again, I know many of you are more interested in the social media stuff, but I want to think through the website with you, because I think it's the same strategy as you need to work with. But if you do want a website, WordPress, I think, is the way to go. It uses the Google API. It pings Google every time you make a post. It has great tagging system. It's really easy to use, and there's a bunch of free templates out there you can use. Like even though I'm a coder and I could hack my own, I don't do it anymore. I don't bother. I pay like $50 for a premium theme, and then I spend a day hacking it, and I'm happy and I'm good to go. And you don't even have to hack it. So this is much more common now. On the info page, I didn't feel like remaking the info page. The art page would have lots of little thumbnails of different art, and then it would bring you to a page like this. The info page would look similar, but then on the left here, first of all, as soon as you clicked it, it would be my email contact and my art representation and my fellowship. It would be the stuff for the academic or the curator to be able to reach me on one click. Then beyond that, there was almost as many pages on info as there were categories of art. I actually used to get out my phone number too, because I wanted, at the time I was a PhD student when I made this, and I made some money. I mean, I had a fellowship, but I made some of my money by being a subject matter expert. Do you guys know what that is? Like when the press calls you to like, when you see in the press, Nathaniel Stern, an expert on media relations, said, and that's called a subject matter expert. And like usually you'll have a list of people who are good at that for like 10 different subjects. And so I had my phone number there, but I found too many people were calling me to like get something from me, so I took it off eventually. Then I would have a separate about page that would be about like awards and publications and exhibitions, a separate artist statement, a separate CV page, a separate page called Community that was about like all the communities that I'm a part of, and teaching that I do, and workshops that I give, a teaching statement, a separate page on press, and a separate page on books and catalogs. And when I say books and catalogs, that doesn't mean stuff that I've necessarily published, but also stuff about, like chapters about my work, or catalogs about my work as an artist. The CV one, and like, so again, that's about like lots of text, lots of community. I'm heavily involved. I make shit happen. MSH. But the CV one is an interesting thing to think about, because all of the places that the vast majority of networks that you're going to join are going to ask for your CV, LinkedIn, academia, etc. You have to really think about whether you want to put it there. I don't ever. And it's because like that's consistently changing and consistently being updated, and then it gets lost online and it can get old really easily, and you have to like consistently go back. So the only place I ever host my CV is on my website, and I just always give a link to that, and then that way whenever I update it, it's just that one place that I have to update it. Yeah.
Do you put a link, like if you were a PhD student, would you put a link to your website if UWM lets you, you know what I mean, in your
Hell yeah.
medium? So
Yeah, like this is your home. If you're gonna have a website, that's your home, and you link back. So I mean, I now do use a lot of these social networks. I use them differently than probably most of you do, because I'm kind of happy where I am in my career. So I'm not looking to move or change a job. I mean, we'll see. That's a whole other story. Obviously, we all have our complex relations to everything, but I use them differently. That being said, for me, my website is my home, and I always link back to it from all of those, and I never upload my CV. But then my CV on my website, I mean, I'm jumping ahead here. But first of all, my CV is not its own page anymore. I have one about page, and that's it, and everything is there. But I actually have 4 versions of the CV. Right, so here I can link off. There's Wikipedia, the page, I'm on Wikipedia. There's Wikipedia, my artist statement and industry, my book. But then here, there's the artist CV, the abbreviated resume, the academic CV, and the unabridged CV. And I even choose these when I'm applying to fellowships, like which one am I going to send to them. And it's because they're always asking for so many different like lengths. You know, like UWM wants a 2-pager or a 1-pager. I don't even bother making that. I just like take the academic CV and cut everything that's not recent off of it. But I find that like when I'm applying to show at a gallery, they say 5 to 10 pages is good, and like they're not interested in my publications on any level. When the resume is a new thing for me. I do a lot of collaborations with engineering now, and we get industry sponsorships for that. And so I kind of like hold my nose, and like there's a page on industry sponsorships. Here, I enjoy the work. I don't enjoy begging for money for it, but I was told a 2-page abbreviated resume, and that I can show it to you. It's much more business orientated and like consultant speak. And then 2 versions of my academic CV. There's the one that I have to hand into UWM. That's for tenure. That's for jobs. That's like far too long, and I think it's absolutely ridiculous, and no one's going to read it. But I'm required to do it by my university anyway, so I might as well upkeep it. This is the one I'm usually sending out. And these are constantly changed though. So like every time I add something, I decide what it's more important than, and I delete something. I think this is ridiculous, 25 pages. So I always keep, the artist CV is never more than 7 pages, the resume is never more than 2, and my standard academic CV is never more than 10. And this is the place you get them. I link from academia and LinkedIn, etc. to here. So the other idea here is that this would be ubiquitous. I would be easy to reach. I would be findable. I came up first on Google with my name, with South African contemporary art, with interactive installations for a number of years. Not so much anymore because there's a lot more other people and I'm not upkeeping my blog anymore, but it did its job. So here, with the original site, this one, I wasn't yet known. So I was trying to be found on Google or by applications to jobs. I was putting up original content. I like, part of what also I was looking at here is that I work across media disciplines, but I'm the new media guy. So right now, the department I'm in is very craft-oriented art department. I like being the new media guy within a craft-oriented art department. I would have accepted a job anywhere. But but new media, being the artsy guy in a new media department didn't have as much thrill for me because I do a lot of collaborating with printmakers and sculptors and metalsmiths, and so it was really important to have this other stuff here and make relevant. You know, you can even see collaborative as a part of this. Favorites. This is what I would send, by the way, to job applications. That would always have 10 of my favorite works on it. Depending on which job that was most important to me at that given moment, it would be the 10 pieces that I thought that particular department would like the best, and then the other ones would deal with it. If I'm honest, the website wasn't just a strategy. You know, it was not even a hub for that strategy. It was more over documentation of a whole lot of work that happened both on and offline, and it worked. Within a few years, I'm part of these communities. I'm showing consistently. I'm tenured now. Actually, I was tenure track, and I have more shows than I can deal with, and like I'm saying no frequently. People knew me and wanted to know me because I made interesting work. I played well with others, and all of that was easy to see here. But then the second site became something else. It carries on some of the original elements, but I now have much newer goals as I'm playing with it. First of all, I'm more often now found on Google or through links on social media than elsewhere. I get a lot of visits to my site from people who don't know me, who I haven't met. And so because of that, my email address is on every single page. I don't even want them to have to click elsewhere. Because most of the other people were learning about me because they had gotten a card from me, or because I was applying to a job, or because they had met me in person, that wasn't quite as important. I also have links to these other social media sites on every single page. That's part of my menu. What's nice there is, on the one hand, it's available. And it's funny, I only added academia after EJ emailed me. It wasn't there before. And she made me think about, because I know many of you are using, she made me think about, why did I make the decision to not use academia, EDU, and is that still relevant, and what has changed and what might change? And I'll talk about that when I get to it, but I decided to add it because, so thanks, EJ. Part of this is also the nature of where the internet has gone too. Most people, there's consistently shares on sites like Facebook, on Twitter, etc. And so people are going to be finding a link to my page and they may not even know my name. So my name remains up here. I have more links instead of less at the top, but then no submenus anymore. Because I want that to be applicable from elsewhere. And then all these links here. The social media links are more about proliferation about these spaces and my willingness to share rather than being a strategy to get people to my site in the first place. And the same kinds of thought processes then about strategy went here. The issue that came up, interestingly enough, after my first site is that I started to be seen too much as an academic. My writing took off. And so people were quoting me and citing me and not paying as much attention to my work as I'd like them to, at least online. I was getting lots and lots of museum shows, and that was working, but then I also decided I do interactive work. I was doing interactive work. I do a lot of social media work. I had started moving into more object-based work a few years ago. Not exclusively, but in part. And so because of that, I actually do want now, all of a sudden, to start getting an audience with commercial galleries. I also, because I had a tenure track position, was I tenure? Whatever, one of them. I felt like I didn't need to work as hard to be seen as an academic, and I could flip it over and be more flashy with the art. So if you look at the new site, you know, right at the front, there isn't this text. There isn't lots of different stuff. There aren't lots of links. There's a big image in the center. Right? And then we've got the going on below that. And even below that, artworks are on the very front page. Then we've got text, and the text vary from reviews about me to reviews by me. When you go to artworks, it's, again, much bigger thumbnails, lots better imagery that kind of shows off what it looks like. And then even within these individual pages, I still have the same amount of text. I still want people to be able to copy and paste as they need. I still am an academic, but the images are front and center now. and they're throughout the page. I've got big, beautiful images, big, beautiful video. Now also here, these have changed. If you click on any one of these, it will take you to, they're all still Creative Commons, they'll all take you to high res on Flickr. Notice Flickr is not up here. And the reason for that is because nobody really uses Flickr as a social network anymore. But it's still a great place to host images, and I've been using it for years. And so I still host my stuff there, but I don't use it as a social network. And they're all, but if you go there, then it has all the information about Creative Commons licensing and what you're allowed to use it for, and more about the work. And so I don't have to clutter my page when I want the images to be big. And then the videos now, I do actually host them on YouTube, because up until recently, YouTube was just the absolute best way for everything to be HTML5. So this is all responsive. Do you guys know what that means? So it's all responsive in HTML5, and YouTube was the only service free that did that when I made this site. Vimeo now does it for free, but it was paid back then. But even then, I have on the page a downloadable. Nobody uses OGV anymore. QuickTime movies are just casing for MP4, so now there's just one download as the MP4, which is the easiest one to use. They're all HD videos and you can download. And I put it on, so you can do it from the same slide. You can either play it via YouTube or click on it to download it. Another part is that I was already seen as part of the communities that I wanted to be seen a part of. And I also don't have time to blog anymore now that I'm full-time here and a dad. And so I didn't feel like I needed to centralize the blog anymore. So that's been removed from the top. Now I've added these social media links so that I can still play up that I'm approachable and I'm a part of these communities. But I mean, blogs aren't even that great. I mean, blogs, there's not many people doing a lot of blogs anymore. And when they do, the vast majority of them are, unfortunately, just reblogs of other people's content. It's still a great way. I mean, Shaviro's blog, I mean, there's so many fantastic blogs out there. But if you're going to do it, you've got to do original content. And you've got to make it good and update it frequently in order to make that happen. The CV I already talked about, but if you look now, here's the links up at the top. The About page is just one page. It's my email, it's my bio, it's all my CVs, and I try. Also, one of the things they used to tell you back then when I made my website is no scrolling, right? It should all be in one, and now that's, apparently scrolling's fine. So that is also why I was able to get rid of a lot of the pages. The categories are slightly different. I don't have as many categories as I used to, and they're mostly based on media. But then what's nice is I've added tags, so that can be broken down further. And even though people may not use them, it's searchable, and it creates, it's okay. I have a rule actually in my classes that if your cell phone rings, the first person to call dibs gets to answer it. And I have to follow the rule too, so like my phone has gone off a couple of times, and like students are like, City Morgue!
That's awesome.
So
Good rule.
it also helps with Google, and then there's an algorithm that WordPress can use for, well, this is a page. Let's go to an artwork. Is it me or is the internet really slow in here?
It's the Wi-Fi is really bad today.
So in here, it uses an algorithm based on those tags and the content to find related artworks and related texts, and I don't have to fill that out. It just does it based on the tags that I've given it. The art always has, again, great documentation. I do features, I do categories. The features are on the front page, but they're much bigger. There's tags, and then in the text, I've broken that down just, again, by similar categories to what I've done to the artworks within that page. And so all this has to do with what people are going to be looking for, what they're going to be interested in, maintaining the communities that I'm a part of, but then also playing up more my involvement at a slightly different level and in a slightly different entry point. So in here, it's broken down to books, catalogs, and press. So the press will always be about my work, the catalogs will always be about my work. The books, I just put books that I'm in as a writer or that I'm in as an artist together, and I let them figure it out. To me, other people will see this separate, and when I apply to fellowships and things like that, it's important to separate them and just tell them, I'm exactly what you want. But I don't separate my practice as an artist from my practice as a writer. The outcomes, though, are somewhat different, although they're becoming more and more intertwined with practices like autoethnography or text-based writing, etc. And that's been a lot of fun as well. The newest and different thing is this industry partnerships. This was added much later, in fact. Like, this site is only about 1.5 years old, and this came about 8 months ago. And it's because I now co-teach classes in engineering. To be honest, the real thing that happened was that the PR woman in Peck School of the Arts wanted to put me forward as like Biz Starts 40 Under 40, and she's like, you need something about all your industry shit. And so she helped me craft an industry page. And similar to my About page now, a lot of what I'm also doing is, like, my artist statement and my artworks and my text, that's all my writing. Industry partnerships and Abouts, I actually cite up what other people say about me to make it seem like, so it almost reads like a Wikipedia page or, you know, a press thing, because again, that's other, I mean, you just did it. I made it so easy for you, right? You just copy and paste it and read it. So you really control, not just online, but elsewhere. What you read is on YouTube, on academia, on LinkedIn, on all those other sites. I still use Twitter and Facebook as personal stuff, and this is something that's interesting. This carries on from my blog, because the people who are looking at LinkedIn and academia are, the LinkedIn is for the industry folks, that's why that's there. And to be honest, you know, and this is something we'll talk about when we get to the whiteboard, like, you know, LinkedIn and academia generally are for people looking for jobs. But because I partner with people and I'm trying to get my students jobs, especially those who I collaborate with in engineering, because I'm looking for funding for the industry partnerships, that's why LinkedIn is there. Academia is a slightly different reason it's there. I'll get to that in a moment. But yeah, so the industry partnerships then has like my TED Talk and the video about, and the startups that I've helped form and whatever. So the Facebook and Twitter, I put professional stuff and personal stuff, carrying on from the blog. Facebook, there's, you know, the like page. I hate that. Like, I hate when people ask me to like them. It just feels so weird. And also the thing is, by the time you get to a certain point, it's not necessarily worth it to do it. Like, I wouldn't do it for a person. I might do it for an initiative or a book or something like that. But, you know, I have like 1,500 or something friends on Facebook before they had that like thing available. And I was already doing personal and professional stuff. Why would I want to make a second page that is only professional when I'm already doing what I want to do on Facebook? I'm not saying that you shouldn't do it. It really depends on the situation you're in. I was already using Facebook as this combination thing. I didn't want to then email my 1,500 friends and say, like me. I felt like I would always lose and have not enough likes, and so I made that conscious decision not to do that. That doesn't mean, like, I just think you need to be strategic about it. I'm not saying don't do it, I'm saying think about it. Twitter, I was, for a new media person, I was a latecomer to Twitter. And the main reason, I was early for other people, but for me, the main reason I joined was because I made an artwork called Tweets in Space, where we did a 30-minute performance, and anyone did the hashtag Tweets in Space. We beamed your tweets towards DJ667c, the closest and most likely exoplanet that might support human-like biological life, with the high-frequency, high-amplitude radio telescope. Yes, I practiced saying that. And so I was trying to like learn the medium and the platform, etc. And so for me, it's like almost the same as Facebook. I have almost identical posts on Twitter, and I don't have as many followers as I would like, but who does? I can't remember who said, it's like, there's two kinds of Twitter users, those who want more followers and liars. So that's a communal thing, and I don't spend a lot of time on it. That being said, I tweet every day. and I Facebook post every day. Like you have to do it at least 7 times a week. Like that's the way you should work, and it should be. It's not that hard. Blogging is way harder. 140 characters is nothing. And especially depending on the kind of academic, for me it's a lot easier because I combine the personal and professional, right? So I can post something about my cute daughter. That's really easy because she's so cute. The academia thing, and this was a tough call for me. I joined it a long time ago because someone asked me to, and admittedly I wasn't listening to my own advice. I wasn't really using it very much or doing very much with it. And then Tasha said that she found some really interesting papers that were not published, that it wasn't just about finding it was not the academic version of LinkedIn, that you can actually find really interesting papers that have not yet been published yet on academia.edu. And that got me thinking about what kind of academic I am in relation to what kind of artist I am. So I had, like you can see, there's 2 papers on here that have been downloaded over 100 times, and those are the ones that have been there for a while. Whereas this one, which is in Leonardo, and this one, which was just in a graduate journal that I published when I was a graduate student. All the rest of them I uploaded last week when you told me when I thought about using it. And it was a number of reasons. One, because I want to be someone who shares, and 2, because although I have all this content available on my website, there's a number of things I couldn't put on here. It's so dispersed. And so people who want to see the writing, it's nice for them to have one place. Interestingly enough, this has been free and online for like 6 months. And I just uploaded it like 3 days ago, and it's already had 24 downloads. So to me, that says something. This is a free companion chapter to my book that came out in August. It's written as a narrative inquiry, kind of autoethnographic style about my own work. I decided to separate it from the more objective stance on other people's work from my book. And interestingly, I thought this was going to be the one that everyone like flagged and said like this is self-indulgent, and like it's the one that everybody loves. It's so weird and wonderful. And then I even put up like catalogs that other people have written about my work. I thought about maybe that would be an interesting place to have them down. You can see like, again, this was up for a week, so I'm excited about the number of downloads in such a short time. And I even put like book and catalog reviews that I linked to. The other thing I've done here though is that I recently decided my next book's actually going to be put out with Open Humanities Press. And I've decided to kind of follow along the trajectory of kind of the openness and the dialogue and the engagement that my art tries to engage with in my publishing. And so because of that, I want that to be part of the network here of like free and sharing information. Obviously, I don't know, how many of you know what Open Humanities Press is? So it's prestigious, peer-reviewed, it's only book series, so like Bruno Latour has a book series, Brian Masumi and Manning have a book series. But it's free. So the books are all downloadable as PDFs. You don't have to go, you all know ARG, right? You don't have to go to ARG to download it because you can actually download it for free from the website. The print publications are still available through University of Michigan, I think it is, but the PDFs are free. And so I just got off the phone with Erin Manning this morning. I'm doing my next book with her and Brian Masumi's series. And so for me, this net, I'm sorry, it's cool. So for me, this kind of plays on along with that kind of network that I'm a part of, and it also makes up for the more academic stuff that's been removed from my website because I wanted to concentrate on the art and plays off that network elsewhere. I'm sorry, I talked for longer than I thought I would. How much time is this supposed to end at 1?
Yeah. But you can go if you need to. I know that some folks will just sort of, you know, if you're okay with folks filtering out as they need to.
No, of course. Just, I'm boring. You can leave whenever you want.
Can I make a plug before people leave?
Do it.
If people want help with making WordPress sites or doing any of these things, don't forget, the DH Live you're in has drop-in hours almost every day of the week, and all the drop-in hours are people here who can help you do that, and it's not hard.
It's not, right? It's like using Gmail once you have the site set up. It's all WYSIWYG. So the workshop part of this that we have 5 minutes for, but I can stay a little longer. Actually, wait, I'm going to make one quick plug. For those of you who are interested in new media, and or issues of identity and race. I don't know if you're familiar with the work of Mendy and Keith Obadike, but they're this amazing couple, most well known for Keith selling his blackness on eBay in 2001, but also do a lot of multimedia work. They gave an artist talk at UWM last night. They have an exhibition opening and a free performance called American Cipher, which they did a sound piece in collaboration with Thomas Jefferson's old plantation. And they got a hold of some of Sally, what's her name? Sally Hemings. They got a hold of like her bell and like made music with her bell. And like it's a really interesting project. But that opening's tonight at Innova, which is the Institute of Visual Arts here. So what I thought we could do actually is I'd be curious to know which networks you guys are using or want to use or have thought about using. And I thought maybe we can talk about who the audiences are for those networks and what impact you'd like to have or you think they could have, and we can strategize together what you might use. So obviously there's like, and then realistically decide how much work we can put into it, right? Like for example, I know a blog sounds like a lot of work to do it, but you're PhD students, most of you, right? Like you're already writing really awesome papers. Put them online.
Supposedly.
Well, that's what I did. I mean, in fact, I did it before I was a PhD student. I was just doing art, reviews of art, book reviews, things like that. But anyway, so Twitter, right? Blog, Facebook, LinkedIn, academia, YouTube. We'll just leave Flickr off, right?
Yeah.
Anything else like Instagram? Is that what you use Instagram?
Goodreads.
What?
Goodreads.
Goodreads, for sure. I should join that. Joke. I should build a website. And is anybody else using anything else? Can you see this?
No, the green one works better, by the way.
Okay. Tumblr. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, with that, Tumblr's different from the blog, though. And like blog, you could do WordPress like on your own,
People
or
use Tumblr as a WordPress substitute, though.
yeah, like so Tumblr could be this. And then what's the other one? Blogger, right?
Yeah.
Pinterest. I think that's more like my kids.
Like
The art students, they're using Instagram, they're using Pinterest, they're putting their own work up. Nothing? Okay, so
I think
who
this
are
is
the...
why I'm here.
Hmm?
I think this is why I'm here, because I want to know what else
You want to
there
know
is.
what else there is?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are the bigs, right? I think what's interesting is it also depends on, and this is the audience thing, and maybe we should look at that. Because for example, like Facebook is like over 30s usually in terms of your audience. Like it's so not cool for my undergrads. Like, I mean, they use it, sure, begrudgingly, I guess. But they're all about Instagram. They're all about Pinterest. They're all about visual engagement, not having to write anything, and not being on a site where their parents and grandparents are members. That being said, if you're talking career stuff, I mean, these are the people you want to be engaging with. And that's how I met Tasha on Facebook. And not only that, but it's actually a great way to network. That like on a low-key, subtle way. It doesn't feel as aggressive to friend someone. Facebook was how, I don't know, do any of you know who Christiana Paul is? So she wrote the book called she wrote a book on new media art. She's written a book on curatorial practices for new media. She is the curator, the new media curator at the Whitney. She runs the media studies program at the New School. And the way we met was I friended her on Facebook. And then slowly, a year later, she saw my post about my book, and then now she's asked me to write a chapter in the Blackwell Wiley, A Companion to Digital Art, on the topic. And so like, it's slow, right? These are all long-term stuff. Like I friended her on Facebook. She probably at some point encountered my website. It's not an aggressive thing. This is not a short-term success thing. But it is. But it can function in really interesting ways. Twitter is really weird. Like who do you think of? Who do you think of when you think of the audiences for Twitter?
Academics.
Academics. Yeah.
And professionals.
Academics. Professionals. And the reason I say it's weird is because like that's who we think of. but then a lot of it is like ads and promotions,
Yeah, I was just
right?
gonna say
Yeah.
marketing.
And then there's the, like, you can all see how many followers, you can all see how many retweets, and it's starting to get to the point where like sometimes that looks bad. Like if you have too many retweets, people think it's an advertisement. People think that you're like gaming the system, right? But if you have too few followers, nobody wants to pay any attention to you. And so it becomes one of those strange spaces. I think that, to me, the best use of Twitter is actually not just online, but also like, I find it most interesting when I'm at a conference. And there's a hashtag at that conference for that conference. And we're telling each other what's going on at that conference, who said what, which talk you need to go to, et cetera, and so forth. And so to me, Twitter became what Facebook never did, which is this kind of real-time space. Like Facebook is more about the hot links. And although Twitter is good for that, where you also see a proliferation of certain kinds of links and certain kinds of blog content too, like that you'll see across Twitter and Facebook. Twitter is like real-time, and like there's no better place, like if you wanted to get lots of followers, than to be saying smart hashtag at a specific conference. Like that's when I pick up the most followers and follow the most people. Yeah.
I totally understand what you're saying. I was laughing because I think I only tweet when I am at conferences.
Yeah.
So, maybe I should fix that because I'm really boring to my other friends.
It's okay.
But
That's a good strategy though. If you say, I'm just going to do this at conferences,
Yeah.
like it's okay.
it's just kind of happened.
Yeah.
But I have a question more so in it. It made me think of it because of Twitter. How do you get around being too in people's spaces if you are tweeting a lot and blogging a lot? And I'm just like, there are certain, like I follow Ian Bogost. He tweets every 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And so
He's a jerk.
well, he can be.
And
So
OP's bullshit. But
I kind of just, and I can like go
should I tell
around
you how I
that.
really feel? Sorry.
No, it's fine. So I understand putting your face out there, but I guess I'm just asking about balance because you
Yeah.
just spoke about the long game with friending someone on Facebook, and now like you a year later have this great thing blossoming, and that's wonderful. But at the same time, when we are kind of trying to figure out the field
Yeah.
and looking for jobs, I guess I just am afraid that if you're doing it too much, you might look like,
Absolutely.
oh gosh, I have to tweet today.
Absolutely.
Here's an article.
I think that's a really good point. And I think, how do I say this? I think you're totally right. And I think people can sense when it's about promoting yourself versus when it's about engaging or being a part of a community and trying to be in dialogue. And so on the one hand, here I am telling you, here are the strategies, here's how you do this, here's how you engage. On the other hand, like, I didn't have an end game when I friended Christiana Paul. I thought she was interesting. Like it was like when you said, it's interesting that you use the phrase end game, because although I'm talking about strategies, for me they're not strategies to win. They're strategies of engagement. They're strategies of dialogue in communal spaces. Funnily enough, Keith and Mendy last night were asked, like, what's the best thing to do for your career? They said, concentrate on your passion. And although that's really cliched, and like there was that great article that went out recently that said, stop saying get a job you love and you'll never work a day in your life. Did you see it? And they said like academics are the worst at this because they get so taken advantage of consistently because they think they love their job so much and they don't say what they're doing is actually work. It is work. Stop saying no. But on the flip side of that, I think that there's a tough balance between this kind of self-promotional, like buy my new book, and I just published this article, and check this out, and this kind of, I mean, even when there's like I say, 3 times a week a blog post or something thoughtful, it's like, if you're actually engaged with the topic, it's not going to be seen as self-promotional, right? It's going to be seen as dialogical. It's going to be seen as you being interested in the world, rather you asking other people to solely be interested in you. I think there is a cutoff point, too, as well. You know, like when I say, oh, you should tweet or Facebook every day, like Ian Bogost, crap, I mean, what is it, 100 a day? I mean, like, I think he's got Twitter in his Bible and he just looks around and the tweet comes out. But also, like, it's not a rule. It's not, oh, you have to tweet today. But I'd say generally on average, that's where I think you should be. If you feel like that's not your strategy, like that's where I think I should be, let me rephrase that. If your strategy is, no, I'm just gonna do this at conferences because this is where I feel engaged and that's how I use the platform, that's a good strategy for you, possibly, right? Like if you're a face-to-face person, then Twitter just augments that engagement and that encounter for you, rather than you being online. For me, remember, I'm a new media artist. Most of my audience is online. The two works I'm most well known for are an intervention in Twitter and an intervention in Wikipedia. And both of them required thousands of users in order to function. So I had to be doing that. And sometimes I do go overboard. I lost, although I gained a lot of followers while I was doing those projects, I also lost a lot of followers while I was doing those projects because I went a little overboard, for example, the day before. I've done crowdfunding as well, and I'll never do it again. I've done it twice, and it's begging, and people get pissed off at you. And I don't know how many of you have done crowdfunding, or how many of you thought about doing crowdfunding, you know, like Kickstarter and stuff like that. And it used to be that if you just had a good project, it would get funded because it was new and different. But now people are kind of tapped out. You know, you have a request for crowdfunding every day, 5 times a day, depending on who you are. And what it comes down to is people whose friends give them crap loads of money, or people who are pre-selling products. Generally, if it's a good idea, it's not going to get anything. And as an example, Tweets in Space was in Wired, it was in Time.com, it was in the Wall Street Journal, it was in the Guardian UK, I was on BBC Radio, and all these places were like, this project is great, give money now. Not one person that I didn't know donated money. Not one. Like even the guy from town was like, go give money, this is awesome. Not one person. In the end, it got funded from National Geographic. Like, I mean, so it was cool, it worked. We got funding, but not from crowdfunding directly. It was that indirect media blitz that did it for us. Yeah?
I have 2 questions. One is, when you're writing a blog, do you think that you should have a different voice than when you're writing an academic paper? I've heard that before for, you know, blog writing is different than academic writing. And then, what was the other one? Oh yes, so do you think that any picture that you post should be nice, beautiful, crisp, or do you think you can, like, you know, if you're working on some project, like in a museum, you have a crappy phone picture, like is that something that you should put online, or should you decide not to?
These are really good questions. Thank you. I want to say first, start with the qualifier that I think this always has to be strategic.
Yeah.
And so there isn't a steadfast rule in terms of do's or don'ts that apply to everyone, but I can answer it more generally and what to think about when you're doing that. In terms of the blog, a different voice, generally, I would agree with that. I think the nature of a blog is much more personal, and people are reading it much more quickly. When people sit down, like if you think about who your audience is, the audience of an academic paper is going to buy the journal and be prepared to sit down and read it. Most readers of a blog are going to be sent a link, and they're going to be like reading it for 5 minutes while they're drinking coffee or in between 2 things. And so generally speaking, you do want it to be easier. That being said, depending on your strategy, there can be deviations from that. Steven Shaviro, I think, is a perfect example, where he's publishing a lot of his academic papers on his blog. He treats it like a graduate seminar very often, where he's putting out his ideas, getting comments on them, and then using that to write his next book. I think also depending on the voice you have within your books. I mean, when I think about it, I do a lot of different writing. So I used to write for rhizome.org. I don't know how many of you know Rhizome, but it's a new media website for art based at the New Museum in New York. And I would do reviews and books and exhibitions for them. And they would sit somewhere between what an academic paper would be and what a blog would be. When I would do my blog, it would be much more personal. I sometimes write for the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, so that will be much not academic at all. And even when I try to do that, I always get it sent back from Mary Louise, and she's like, "You still sound too much like a bloody academic," and I have to like change the language somewhat. But I also then flip that over, and I will write, like the companion chapter to my book is very much it's a narrative inquiry, and it's not very academic. And sometimes that's a voice you want to have, and I think especially for a PhD student, there's going to be a much bigger distinction. If you do any of the reading on narrative inquiry and ethnography, there's a lot of stuff in there about how you're allowed to be experimental, you're allowed to bring in your personal life, once you've already tenured and got 5 books out. as a PhD student, you're not. Like, you have to have clear, like, you have to thesis, you have to follow your thesis, you have to substantiate, you have to have what my wife calls the money chapter, which is the, the lit review, right? That's boring. Like, that's why most PhDs don't become books. It's not because the research isn't good, it's because you have to cut half of it, because that doesn't belong in a book. Who wants a lit review? Who wants to read a lit review in a book? Unless you're Leonardo series at MIT, but those are history books. Sorry, my
No, I just said PhD students want to lit review, so they
fair enough. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Cyclical.
And so because of that, you would never want that necessarily on a blog, unless you are writing it, like, is that your strategy to get PhD students to love you? Here's a fantastic example of that. PhD to published. Charlotte Frost. She is the series editor of my first book, actually. And so she's looking for, her part of her goal is to look for young academics who are not scared of new media, who want to look at, most specifically, art history and how it's written online and through new media and with new media. So I wrote a book on interactive art, free companion chapter online that's commentable. I was the first book in the series. Hers is about how art history happens on listservs. Hers is the second book in the series, and she's going to go on from there. So because she's looking for young academics, part of her strategy is to engage and help them as part of that community and help to change the culture of how scholarship is viewed. So she also liked the fact that I do narrative inquiry and I do a blog. So her blog is a lot of tips on crossing disciplines, on how to get published, on how to change your lit review into a chapter, on how to finish the PhD, but then how to move beyond the PhD, on looking for jobs. In fact, how I got, this is really funny, how I got the book deal was through this engagement. I had finished my PhD, I was working on a book proposal. She asked me to write a blog post for her on how what changed from the PhD to the book proposal and what I was doing. She forgot to post it. Like, I sent it to her and she just forgot to post it. And I just thought she didn't like it. So I was like, whatever, that's fine, no big deal. And I moved on. I decided to only send out the book to 2 publishers. Because I said, if I don't get my top 2 publishers, I'm not even interested. My art career is taking off. I'll break it up. I'll publish some articles and I'll continue to make art. MIT had a book coming out within a week of mine that was basically the same book. So they said, no, you didn't even get back to me. So then Charlotte contacts me and says, oh, I'm so sorry, I totally forgot to publish your blog post. And I said, well, actually I decided not to publish the book, so I don't know how relevant it is. So she was like, well, I'll take it. And that was it. And like at first I was like, I don't know if I want to go with a small name publisher. This is hard. And then she was like, Nathaniel, I'll put 40 color images in it and keep it under $20. We'll publish it as an ebook for $10. And you've already got Tumblr. What the fuck do you need you in for? and I said, you're right. So that's what I did. And in fact, that led to now I have the people most cited in my current book are Brian Masumi and Aaron Manning, and my next book is with their series. So I mean, it all worked out really, really well. But I think that her strategy is in terms of, and again, like this I think goes to your point. Like on the one hand, she's really strategic around how to build these networks. On the other hand, she believes in the network. She believes in these dialogues. She believes in the students and the people that she's supporting. She wants to help them. She wants to be a part of that. It's not just this self-promotional love me fest, which can be really annoying and frustrating. And I too will leave those followers behind. That doesn't mean you can't occasionally do it. You bet your ass. The day that my Kindle book came out, the day that my book came out, I posted it. The day that my Kindle book came out, I posted it because it came out a few months later. You bet your ass that I signed up for Amazon Associates and used my link so that I got $1 every time I bought the book. Because maybe I'll actually make some money on it because the publisher's not going to pay me. So I think that those kinds of things are important. I deviated from your question a bit, but I'm hoping that the foundation, you understand the foundations here. I do think for PhD students especially, yes, you want a different voice. And my voice on my blog, which I continued for the first year of my PhD, was very different from my writing that I was giving my supervisor. In terms of the images, it depends how many images you have, and again, what kind of
what the purpose is.
Yeah, what the purposes are and what kind of person you want to appear like. Like the image that's proliferated of me is this one, and I love it. Right? To me, it's like the romantic techno-romanticism, as Marky and Hansen called it. Right? I love this, and so this is everywhere. And I use this on my website. It's on my cards. I send it to people, etc. But then occasionally, like, I post whatever to Facebook, I post whatever to Flickr, and sometimes, like, it's true, like, there's pictures up there I don't like of myself. I post to Facebook as well. But luckily, because I have so much of my, because I have such a strong online presence, the images that I'll see the most will be that one that I like. But for example, like this one, I'm blogging this one, I hate that photo, and it was because Artrop, a website I wrote for, I used to write for when I lived in South Africa, insisted that this was the coolest photo ever. And they started posting it everywhere, and it pissed me off. I'm like, here's an older version, but I like my art comes out, like I don't like this or that. This one I hate. You know, but at the same time, like, so I mean, I think you do want to be somewhat careful about it, but it depends how many images of you there are. Like, if you can have 1 or 2 or 3 that proliferate more than the rest of them, then I think it's okay. And although Facebook and Flickr are used, you will have some control over what you send to museums or publishers, etc. And like, yeah, you should get that professionally done. Like I had a photo student come and take this image of me when I was making the work, when I was performing the work. And then I have a headshot that someone did of me as well when they insist that they can use that, and I use that headshot when I send that out. I'm working on a new one now. I'm bringing my computer on a scuba trip. Yeah.
I'd like to hear more about your thoughts on academia.edu. I'm thinking I'm going to probably use that more now.
Yeah.
I'm currently like on the job market, or will be in the next year, and it seems to me that's like a pretty active place for the communities that I'm a part of. You know,
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering, yeah, if there's distinct strategies. You said you just kind of put that together. If that's a place that can be kind of a home, I'm not going to build like a website that's going to be a separate home for me. You know, I was gonna, you know, I was doing like, I don't know that I'm gonna do like a WordPress blog and make that kind of a home, you know, I don't think I'm gonna do that. So I'm wondering, yeah, if you have thoughts about academia.edu, like is it robust enough to kind of be a home sort of site for, you know, hosting a lot of your articles and stuff like that.
Did you want to comment on that?
I was just going to say, I think the thing to know about academia.edu too is that it was started by a couple of academics. It's not for profit, at least not
Right.
yet. Its morals and ethics are slightly different than Facebook. So if people have an issue with being on Facebook, that's also why a lot of people are pulling their Facebook accounts and going to
Yeah.
academia.edu.
See, it's interesting to me that you say that because, well, first of all, I agree, and I think that that's really great. But second of all, what's interesting to me there is that you just nailed part of the problem with academia base. I think it can be, especially for if you are not going to blog, and if you don't worry about visual stuff. I think it can be. But if you're thinking about it as a replacement for Facebook, then that is more of a personal network than a professional one to some extent.
Yeah.
Now that being said, most academics don't separate those that much. But if you do think about it, like you friend someone on Facebook, you follow someone on academia. So there's a bit of objective distancing, which I find really amusing in the academy, and especially humanities-based academy now, where we're not supposed to like, subject-object relations are supposed to be called into question. I think that being said, more and more, first of all, most of the people on academia.edu are young scholars like you, so you're going to be like finding each other's papers, but you're not necessarily going to find a job because you're all there looking for jobs. It's like LinkedIn, right? Like LinkedIn, it's like everybody's looking for a job. The difference with LinkedIn is that also people do often look for there are companies that are looking for talent on LinkedIn, especially business and engineering. You don't see that as much as academia.edu, people looking specific, like actual recruitment happening on academia.edu because it's so overwhelming, there's so many people there, there's so few jobs, there's so many applicants for those jobs. That being said, you do see ads for those jobs there. And it's the kind of thing where you strategize. How are people going to find you? If that's your home base, think about what these job applications want. Put them there. Put your best papers there, not all of them, only the best ones, right? Strategize around which ones you're going to put there. Even have it match the dream job that you're applying to specifically. And know that the way they're going to find you is through your application.